Okay, hi everybody.
Hey
Um,
everyone.
good evening. I think they're on mute, so you can put your thumbs up, say hello, put stuff in the chat. Because it's Ellie's night tonight, and we're lucky to have Ellie. She's doing a residency in the UK at the moment, so she's going to share all this information with you. So yeah, so this is Ellie's moment, I guess, and we're looking forward to seeing her work and seeing her practice. And if you've got any questions, please put it in the chat. And then at the end, I'll turn the mics off, and you can ask as many questions as you want. And Ellie's more than happy to share. All right. So over to you, Ellie, and good luck.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And it's a lovely chance to chat about our work and chat with everyone here as well. Um, Brief intro. I am a fashion illustrator, generally based out of New York City, but at the moment in London doing a residency with the Blur Studios. So it's been a bit of an adventure just settling into London life. And my background in the fashion world is I have a degree in couture that I got from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. So I did start from the sewing perspective of things. And prior to that, I was a dancer myself. So I have a history in the performing arts. And from there, it all kind of started working in costuming for a while. And now as a full time illustrator. And I've split my work up into two segments that I'm going to chat through with you guys tonight. The first is the live work that I do for different brands at events, but as well as fashion weeks. And I've been very lucky to cover quite a few seasons of Fashion Week already. So I have a few snippets of those images. And then the second half is something that's still new to me, and I'm kind of getting my feet wet in a bit more of a contemporary art fashion illustration mix. So I'll share some works from that category as well. And it's still, again, a work in progress as in everything. But so there's kind of a range of varieties with those illustrations. But to kick off with the Fashion Week images, here we go. So I have a sample of a couple of shows. I've been covering Fashion Week since the 2018 seasons. And I was kind of lucky enough to start and dive right in with the couture, which was wonderful because of my education in couture. It was a really great chance to see these amazing garments live, and then to capture them in illustration was a real treat and something I enjoy very much twice a year. So some of the brands that I've illustrated for are Zuhair Murad, which is the left image here, Stéphane Rolland. This is a New York Fashion Week look from Christian Siriano, I believe. And this is a Paris Fashion Week ready-to-wear look as well. Um, so kind of a range. I was in London last in February as well for those ready-to-wear shows, and did some work for Paul Costello and Helen Anthony. So a couple of other brands there, and Julian McDonald as well. He hosted a collaboration show, which was very theatrical and costumey. So it was a pleasure to get those illustrations. And a bit about the process. When I first started, it was very much a live on the spot, immediate delivery illustration process, which now I'm lucky enough that I have a bit more agency in working with those brands and their PR companies that I have a bit of headway. So I will do rough sketches live at the shows, but then I do finish them off, as you can see, with some digital touches afterwards. So I'd say the turnaround is probably a 24-hour instead of the previous immediate turnaround, but it is a bit of a building trust and confidence that you have to prove the first is possible, and then you get awarded with that leeway bonus time. So that's been very helpful recently, and it's been a nice development because I can get into some more of the backgrounds and to play a little bit more with the, I guess, ambiance of the sketch, which I haven't done that much previously. They've been very much like the Siriano kind of standalone just immediate garment looks, whereas these Zuhair Murad sketches that I did and a lot of the London Fashion Week sketches that I did have a bit more staging involved as well. In terms of process, again, so I will put down the roughs onto paper. Go-tos, just pencil. I have a couple of markers that I will blend with very frequently and just kind of really get down more line work and ink work. And then once I transfer it into digital, that's when I'll start playing with color because as much as I struggle with digital artwork, for me, it's this issue of scale. I always have trouble with the screen, the zooming in and the zooming out. I feel like it's an inconsistent scale for me to work through. So I do like to get the form down on paper, but I do love digital for playing with color modifications and layering, especially in something like this top work here from Stéphane Rolland, just to be able to get all those shadows in and some of that kind of wistful white that is a bit trickier to get quite as clean on sketch paper. So that will be work that's done digitally. And what I also like to do on, especially for the couture shows, is I really want to get as much detail into the garments as possible because that is kind of where all of that savoir-faire and craftsmanship comes to life. So little things like the beading, the embroidery, the fits and the cuts of the gowns, especially the Stéphane Rolland collection had crazy movement and really kind of these billowing shapes that were trickier to capture, but also a pleasure. So I do enjoy that a lot. Any kind of, again, costuming over the top element is really where my heart lies. And then, of course, so still a bit, I guess, not necessarily something you would see walking down the street, but a bit more ready to wear from the Paris shows, the bottom sketch. And those are lovely to capture as well, and a big help in the live work that I do for brands, because you do have clients at a shop, you're sitting there, and if it's, you get a sketch with a purchase, or if it's an event, or even, sometimes weddings or something like that, you have people coming up in, nice attire, but definitely far from the theatrics that maybe the Paris couture fashion weeks afford. So it is a pleasure to kind of get to practice that. So then it carries into the live work at events, just the ready to wear, the jeans, the t-shirts, the blazers, kind of more street ready looks. So that's a sample. And again, the shops, it's definitely a different experience. There is a much more stringent time clock now, whereas before the pressure on me was much more on the lives for the fashion shows. Now there's a lot more pressure in the shops because it's a high volume and a very quick turnaround. I think the last event in New York that I did, I got out, let's say 38 sketches in 2 hours, which was just kind of a nonstop marathon of the guests that attended. So it is also, a lovely social event, and chat and interact with the clients, but at the same time, it's very much kind of this nonstop drawing and sketching, and it is now the more daunting of the two tasks. So yeah, just a little brief overview of the live work. And now I can get into some of the newer contemporary things. 1 second, let me swap over. Here we go. So these are some more contemporary mixed media works, and this really runs the gamut. Again, staying with the love of costuming and performing arts. I've done a lot of work with the Drawing Cabaret group, as well as Amy Benton, who is also a cabaret performer and model. And they've just been wonderfully inspiring, especially when it comes to practicing movement in illustration, which later really helps and carries on to the live work. But they have just these incredible dynamic poses all the time, and everything ranging from quick movement to kind of slower, almost more portrait type poses. But so the bottom is a sample from one of Amy's sessions. And then this look was from one of the Drawing Cabaret Coutures, but I did put on a pair of, I believe, Mugler boots, just to add a little something from the fashion world. And these are much slower works. I love to play with layering. That's been especially prevalent now. This left work is a bit of a teaser for the upcoming show that I have with the Blur Studios that I'm working on right now. And again, it's very much all about layering and layering and layering. And I've always looked to photography for inspirational images, especially when it comes to how photographs are anchored and kind of the layout and the composition of photographs. I've always found that a very great educational resource in building illustrations as well, because I think it just trains the eye very well to do a similar job. So that was kind of the first touch point with photography. And then just the color play. You see so many amazing kind of almost Fauvist photography now, I think spearheaded by Elisaveta Parodina from, I believe, Germany. And it's just this really high intensity color that I think is just so interesting to look at as an illustrator and to break that down and kind of reinterpret it onto paper, which is this illustration here in the upper right. That's from one of her editorials, I believe, for Italian Vogue, if I'm not mistaken. So that was kind of the second foray into my appreciation and kind of immersion into the photography field. And now I guess the photography work has taken on even more of an accent in that I'm using a lot of the development techniques and some of the film techniques that photographers use, but I'm applying those to illustration and really just layering and layering. So this left piece and what I'm working on at Blur now is the concept of layering like photographers do, where you go from the layering of a set and then the actual negative, and then you import it and the digital alterations, and then you get that final image. So I'm kind of applying the same process but to illustration. So doing a rough sketch and staging in the image, and then I will transfer it to film and I'm cyanotyping it. And then on top of that, it goes in digitally and I will add kind of some digital touches as well to get to the final illustration. And I think the more we've been talking to the Blur team about this process and the more I've been kind of delving into some of the finer details, I realized that I think that love of layering is also very much tied into the performing arts. And just if you think of how much goes into building a character on stage or on, a dance floor or in any kind of performance atmosphere, there's so many elements to getting to that character. Lines, costuming, lighting, movement, like it all feeds. And I think I'm enjoying a lot this process of the layering because, again, each layer adds an element of that character and gets us to the point where, you can build these really unique images, but also I think they kind of have a little bit of a spirit of their own and also kind of very distinct characters that you can build up. A designer that I love very much who does a lot of interplay again with also performing arts is Juana Martin, and that's the bottom right-hand image. She is a Spanish-based designer in Malaga, and she does a lot of work with the local artisans there and the local performers and a lot of the kind of heritage performing history of Spain, and brings those influences into her brilliant couture designs, which I've been very lucky to cover at Fashion Week as well. And I've worked with them for a couple of years now. So that's, again, that touch point of fashion meets performing arts meets just these really dynamic characters. So I believe the last show she had was the flamenco themed. So she had performers as well as models walking and presenting the collection across the runway. So it really does lend a lot of atmosphere, and I think gives more depth to the clothing that we're trying to capture. If it's not just about the garment, but the type of person that would wear this garment, the era, the attitudes, the character of the person wearing the garment, I think it adds a really interesting context that I do enjoy capturing quite a bit. So we'll see. It's in the early days. These experiments, I'm about a week in to the Blur residency, and our exhibition is going to be on May 10th. So if any of you would like to attend, it is in London. And I'm working with a very interesting kind of immersive contemporary artist as well. His name is Ned, and he's doing some wonderful and fascinating things with circuits and kind of live, kind of more immersive installations. So he will be presenting alongside me at that event. And as I have more details, I will be sure to post them on Instagram and in our Fida channels as well. So just to keep your eyes out for that. But we're just starting. We're just a week in, and again, that's going to be on May 10th. So we'll see how all of these characters develop until then. And I don't know if anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments. Happy to chat.
Ellie, I'll switch them on.
Oh, sure, of course.
I've got everyone on mute. In case anyone wants to ask a question, feel free to jump in.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Ashley.
I've been really excited to watch this member moment.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet.
Yeah, your work's incredible. I'm always blown away. I have a question about your Fashion Week illustrations. How
Sure.
do the brands generally like utilize and implement your final works? Like where do those images appear?
Sure. So there's a couple of places. Firstly, a lot of the brands gift them to, if they have, brand representatives walking in the shows that I'm capturing, the physical, final original illustrations will go to them, or, VIP guests that attend the shows at the end of the show might get a physical illustration from one of the runway looks. Another option is just social media, and for their own marketing purposes, they'll share advertisements, story reels as well. So that's kind of the second prong. And then I've had a lot of brands use them later on for kind of internal purposes, like the illustrations might become invitations to a private event that they host for clients, or things like that, just for their own, again, client-facing internal purposes. There seem to be quite a few higher end luxury events now, especially after COVID. I guess they're coming back with quite the fervor. And a lot of those invitations are, they like to incorporate a little bit of something non-photography. So yeah, I think those are the main uses. I'm trying to think if there was any other. I've recently gotten some work of up and coming brands who, with tighter budgets now, are trying to find a way to use illustration as kind of a, I guess it's supposed to be like half flats, half something pretty to use for promotional purposes and like web page design. But they do also want it to serve a technical purpose. So that's been a bit of a adventure trying to get those illustrations completed. But yeah, I think I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more requests like that, of this kind of hybrid. Yes, it's art, but we would also like to use it practically if possible. So because I have just seen an uptick in that. So that'll be kind of the next thing to navigate, because I'm not totally sure. We're still in the works of how to balance that well and correctly.
Ellie, sorry, you mean they're like a technical drawing but drawn by hand?
No, so they have flats, which go out to the factories. But then I guess, so this particular brand, and this is, I think, the second or third type of request I've had, will also do like embellishments or hand painting after the garment is completed. So they do want that to be detailed for their staff in the illustration. Then they also want to use the illustration for like web page and marketing. So it's been interesting. You know, again, coming from a technical education, I've very much been taught that, you know, technical specs are for technical things and illustration is for illustration. But we're trying to meld the line. We'll see how that works.
So do you mean they supply you with the flats and then you have
Yes.
you work on top of them to do an embellishment?
Basically, yeah. So I have the flats, and I am putting those garments onto a bit more static figures, but they are on figures. Something like almost like a croquis, I guess.
Yeah.
And then whatever the hand painting that's going to be on the garment, I will do a miniature version of that on the illustration to guide whoever in the workshop is going to be doing the hand painting.
Okay, so and would they supply you with the artwork that's going to be, or are you actually making the artwork?
I'm making the artwork, yeah.
Okay. So that's not too bad.
No, it's not bad at all. It's just been an interesting kind of middle ground that I never really thought about. And that has just recently, I think, again, budgetary constraints, and everyone's kind of trying to make the most of what they get. So in this sense, it's how can we incorporate things even more?
I did lots of that. So it's quite a normal, that's been
Yeah.
around, especially with luxury brands. If you've got a designer and then they bring you in as maybe a person for print, and then you think about how the print, especially VIP. I did something for Angelina Jolie with a dragon for
Oh, wow.
Kung Fu Panda, and I had to design the dragon and then work out the scale of it, so then they could get it embroidered in India and printed in Italy, and it went to about 5 different countries, this dress.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah, this is my first kind of foray into that type of work, because it's always either been like the flats or illustrations, and now it's kind of this hybrid.
yeah,
So it's been interesting because I honestly always assumed that, you know, whoever's designing the prints and the embroidery is with the brand. I didn't know that that was
no.
like an outsourced.
And also a lot of the designers now becoming are stylists, so they actually can't draw.
That's, yeah.
So there'll be more work as we shift more of designers from a styling background, architecture background, whatever they're from. The illustrators will have more of a role, so we'll see more of that coming around. So it's good. It's work at the end of the day. It's interesting.
Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's been an education for sure, and I'm excited to see what the final
Yeah.
garments end up looking like.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good, and I can see a few fashion design people in here, so I'm pretty sure they'll have questions. I think Claire had a question.
Claire, I can read in the chat, was asking about working with an agency. So I know you know it's a conversation we often have of the pros and cons. For me personally, I've found it a big help because just logistically, I seem to be doing a lot of work outside the US, which is lovely. Like I'm grateful to have it, but there's just, logistical practicalities of payments and contractual things that I really enjoy having an agent to help with and to go through, and it cuts a lot of admin and just kind of cuts a lot of time out of my schedule. That's been incredibly helpful. And the agency I'm with, it's very much commercially oriented. It's Illustration X. So they have a very big base of illustrators that work across a lot of fields. So I know that there are some more niche, like fashion illustration specific agencies. But my agency is quite broad, which again comes with its pros and cons. I've had the chance to do some, things that maybe I wouldn't necessarily do. I've gotten into hand painting glass quite a bit recently for one of their clients, which at first again was, a learning curve, but now I really enjoy, and I'm kind of branching out into doing some of that work as well, just on my own for we'll see what happens kind of projects. So it again, pros and cons. But for me, the pros have definitely been that kind of expanding into other fields of art that I didn't necessarily have access to before. Again, the same thing with this client that I'm doing the kind of pattern and embroidery illustrations for. So it's brought in a new type of work that I really appreciate.
Elly, it's Patricia here. May I ask a question?
Hi,
how are you doing? I was just wondering, how specific is the brief that you get from your client when they ask you to basically design the artwork that goes on the garments?
So I've had 3 instances of this, so I think maybe Patrick might have had more experience to speak to. But I've had it's run the gamut. I've had one designer that's been very specific, provided just massive presentations of images and references for every single look and where he wants like the starting point of the design to be, where he wants the end point. Right. So that was very, and then I've had.
And sorry to cut across you, but no, so in that instance, you were basically facilitating him by visualizing how this would look, because he had done the tech kind of part of it. It starts at point A, it goes over the bust to point C, and it wraps around her head or whatever.
It's unique work because it's a little bit of just like mind reading. You're really just trying to get into the head of someone else's creative vision and get it out on paper.
So you have to read their aura.
Yeah, a little bit. There's something definitely psychic about it, especially when they do have such a clear
intuition pills.
Yeah, I wish those existed. But then again, I've had another designer that's just seen my work through my portfolio and kind of knows what I do, and gave me kind of free rein and said, like, these are the images from your work that I like. If we can steer in that direction. I got color palettes. And that was it.
And that was going to be printed upon the garments.
Yes, those illustrations.
Or embroidered.
So there was a little bit of both. There was going to be some jackets that are going to have like the illustrations on the back with elements of them embroidered.
So fashion illustrations.
Yeah.
Wrapped around. And you were saying you were drawing on glass. Is that fashion illustration on glass?
It's no. Well, yes and no. It was for Van Cleef. So it is kind of a fashion brand, but they release these like limited edition candles every year. And I guess they're like for holiday or annual gifts. And I was hand painting those, both in stores, but then if they had clients to ship to, they would send me like whatever they have an illustrator in France, I believe, that does their annual like installations for the holidays. They do very elaborate displays and themes, and then I will work off of those already completed themes to come up with some drawings for glass. But they've been florals, they've been woodland creature.
Right. That's interesting. Gosh, that was a challenge.
I had never animals.
I was just going to say, far from woodland creatures, you were rare,
Yeah, and that those are the kind of briefs that you don't want to say no to, and you just kind
No,
of see
not with
where it
that
goes.
name. No, not with that
And
name.
yeah, so they were abstract woodland creatures, but I think everyone was happy at the end.
Well, good for you. Talk about being multitasking and multifaceted kind of
Well,
talent.
we're
Done you.
thank you. We're trying. I think Patrick's advice was great. He said, say a yes to everything that comes your way if it sounds like it's
As long as
worthwhile.
it's work and you get
Yeah,
paid.
yeah. So just I've had that in my head, and I don't like to say no to work unless
Yeah.
it's completely, unreasonable or just out of my
Well,
wheelhouse.
you're kind of pushing your comfort zone, which I really admire.
Oh,
You know?
thank you.
No,
I
I
like
do.
to. As I have a little gut sense. If it's something that
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
can do, then I'll take it. But there are also instances where, I know them personally. They're a much better
Yeah.
illustrator suited for this, and it's just not what I do.
Yes.
So I will turn those jobs down. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I can give you a list of people who are infinitely more qualified,
Yeah.
better at
No,
this
I
than
mean,
me. Like this is, you will
push.
never get what you're looking for out of me. So I
Well,
do.
exactly. Yeah. Pushing the edges of the envelope is good, but when you
Yeah,
actually do know and identify and your heart says to you, no, this is not for me. Yeah.
I think that's the great thing also about having this kind of community of artists. You are aware of everyone's work, and
Yeah.
everyone's kind of building out and carving out their
Yeah.
own paths.
Mm.
And yeah, whenever I do get a request for something that I see them and I'm like, oh no, you're not looking for me. You're looking you're looking for
Yeah.
that person. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll,
And
move
that's
along
also
if I
good
can.
with the agency as well, because you don't have to deal with the rejection. You don't have to say, no, I don't want to do it, and no, it's not really me. You can say that to your agent and then they can say it.
Absolutely. Yes, that
So it's
is
not a
also,
face-to-face job. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Good for
that's
you.
great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also like the other real benefit I've found in having the agent is revisions. I think a lot of
Yes.
clients who especially don't know what they want
What
going
they're
into
looking.
the
Yeah.
project,
Yeah.
they will hunt you down endlessly for so many rounds of revisions. And even if, when I had my own contracts that I wrote, it said like three
Yeah.
rounds,
Yeah.
3 rounds, and that's it. And
Yeah.
now they would come back for 4 and 5. And now it's great to have someone else be like, hey, this is your problem now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic, because it sounds a bit like do you know that film with Liam Neeson in it, Taken? And
Yeah.
I will find you. I will hunt you down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's never the ideal
Good
situation.
to have your agent barrier up. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And that's, as soon as that happens, it's like I come out so nice. It's a gentle, like, sure, we'll take care of it. I'm CCing my agent on this. She'll get you the details.
Good for
And,
you. Good for you. No, the work looks great. I've always admired your work. And it's
thank you so much.
oh no, it's the truth.
Very much appreciated.
No problem. I pass you on to somebody else. I think Claire wants to say something now.
Hi, Elly.
Hi, hello.
Just following on, from what you were saying about working with an agency, how does it work with them booking work with you? Because my son was with like an acting agency, and you had to kind of fill out a calendar and say when you were available, when you weren't, when you had holidays, etc. Is it the same with an illustration agency? Or
Yes, essentially it is, or in my experience, it has been. I very much like to travel and bop around, so I don't put too many, barriers on that. And I think right now it seems, I don't know, at least from my perspective, that there's a lot of live like shop events to be done in the States. But when it comes to kind of more creative editorial illustration work, that seems to be a lot of that is in Europe. So I've never put any kind of restrictions for my agents. Like whatever comes in, I'll take a look at every opportunity, and then I'll decide. I've had some very short notice things, because also like people, fall out, things change, plans, whatever, somebody has to cancel, and I always tell them that I'm available at short notice if needed. So I have swung in quite long travel journeys, very short notice. But again, if like now these couple of weeks that I'm in London on the Blur residency, I've blocked that out as time that, I can't be taking a job in the States for 2 days to just fly there and come back.
Does the client pay for all your travel and everything for you to come over here? Or
Yeah, if they fly me out, if it is a travel job, then yes. I mean, there's a travel budget that they will allocate. And sometimes that's the, deal breaker. And I'm sorry, there's no other way I can get to you. And sometimes they're very accommodating, and it's, easy and a nice trip. But it runs the gamut.
oh, that's great. Thank you.
Of course.
I
Hi,
think
Ellie. It's Gemma here.
Hi, Gemma.
It's very beautiful work. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
You mentioned that you did a couture degree. Is your illustration like, does it take up like 100% of your working time, or do you sometimes like pick up a needle and thread and sort of go back to your couture
I've
moments?
my professors in school would always be like, yeah, like your sewing's good, but then they'd see the sketch and they're like, but this is better. So I think I was always more inclined to the drawing. But I do love like detail work. I love embroidering, just like hand stitching, all that. Like I like the little detail work. And I did work as a costume designer right up until COVID. So that was, and there was a lot of hands-on work for that because it was a small company and we did costumes for mainly ballroom dancers. So
Okay.
there was all this, the feathers and the rhinestones and, hand stitched crinolines and beadings and all that kind of lovely and extravagant things.
Yeah.
So I haven't done anything since COVID hit because the company closed and I kind of fell into full-time illustration, but I have been tempted lately. I do still have the mannequin in the apartment and I look at it every now and then and I can imagine something on it. So
Yeah. Cool.
yeah, I can see myself doing that again sometime, but not right now. There hasn't been anything in the works yet, but maybe. Of
Sure. Great. Thank you.
course.
any other questions? Because it would be nice to wrap this up soon. And I know Ellie's busy working on a residency and got lots of work going on. But I know with the agency side of things, the agent will push you as well. So I got a job the night before I got married, and they were asking for changes on the day of my wedding. So an agent will push you, and it's quite tough. So if you and another thing, if you say you're not available a lot to an agent, they'll lose interest in you. So you have to kind of, like I said to Ellie, you always have to be open for work and be ready. I know it's different probably for a model because they have to turn up, but an illustrator can be anywhere, unless it's live drawing at an event. But really and truly, most advertising and editorial work you can do in any place, on the beach, it doesn't matter. It's great. So I think from that side of it, for you, Claire, and if anyone else is thinking about an agent, an agent is good and bad. They have positives and negatives. They won't solve all your problems. They'll get you opportunities, they'll get you work, but they'll also offer you work that you don't want to do. But they'll offer it to you, and it's up to you to work out, is this something I want to do due to finance or not? You have to navigate that, and it's quite difficult if the wrong sort of work comes in. But it's good, I think the landscape's changed a bit. I think fashion illustration is now really being pushed into the agencies a bit more. It wasn't really there as much. So I think Ellie's probably noticed that a lot of because I've spoken to a lot of the illustrators from Illustration X, and they've mentioned that do more fashion illustration work. So they're asking other illustrators to start doing it. I saw Josh Marshall, he's doing a lot of it, and from Lipstick and different companies. So they see there's a market there. But we know the live illustration is really powerful now. There's lots and lots of it. So I think it's a really good time, and it's a case of getting your work out there and, staying on the pulse and being everywhere as much as possible. I think if you follow Elly online, she's everywhere. No, so you know, I saw all the shows you were going to, Paul Costello, and all them different shows that you were attending, and it was like, oh my, wow, you're flying around.
It was
all
a
the shows, and it
hectic
was-
couple of months. I think because the Paris Couture shows were in January, and then February was kind of the fashion month, so it was straight through.
yeah, it was
So
hard.
that like January, February was rough.
Yeah, but you're in good training though, so
Yeah, it was.
like a training camp.
I really did take to heart. I think it was one of our like virtual portfolio reviews
Yeah,
where you did really say just like don't say no to work, especially when you're starting. Like try everything, get a feel for it, find your bits.
yeah,
And I've been just doing that, and it's, you know, it does work well. And I agree that they, you know, don't like to hear no that much, and you don't, you know, you do want to avoid that kind of moniker of being difficult or too
yeah,
picky, or, and you know, sometimes that might come unjustly, maybe. You know, I'm sure there are many nuances, but yeah, you definitely have to be open to kind of whatever they throw at you.
It's a luxury to turn down work.
Absolutely.
That's a luxury, and I think there's not many illustrators, because there'll always be quiet moments. You know, I speak to many of the sort of illustrators at the forefront, and you know, they might say, oh, I'm busy, and then the next minute they're like, I'm free now, because they're always working at a high speed.
It's either, I've also like noticed it's either kind of just 100 miles an hour full on, or it's nothing, and I'm just refreshing my emails every like hour. I'm like, really? Still, like, there's nothing coming in?
There's an Irish phrase for that. It's called, it's a feast or a famine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely true. It's definitely true in the
there's never like a comfortable amount of work where you're just like, oh, this is great, like this is sustainable and healthy and like balance.
Balance of life, a quality of life.
No, it's either all or sheer panic of where is the work.
I think that's just fashion too, you know, it's the fashion world also, you know. Yeah. As I used to say to students, these are not wrinkles, these are scars.
Yeah, very much so.
New stories. Anyway, brilliant. Thank you, Elly. And
thank you, Elly.
Keep us up to date with your blue residency.
Yes, absolutely. I'll share all that info.
Share it on Slack and I know there's a few UK people here, so if they want to come along, and I don't know if we can beam anyone in from somewhere else via Instagram, or you know, you're always sharing stuff as well, so there's always ways of communicating bits and bobs. So we'll come up with a plan. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Elly.
Thanks.
Very much.
Thank you, Elly.
Bye.
Bye bye.